Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's Community Sector Roundtable, which I said before is our fifth we've had with you. So looking forward to the discussion today. I'm Kate Simons. I'm the chairperson of the Essential Services Commission. To start, I'd like to acknowledge the traditional owners on all the lands we're meeting on today and pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging. I'd like to acknowledge the connection that Indigenous Australians hold to country and culture. Well, we last met in July, and in that time the Commission has amended some energy requirements relating to the Utility Relief Grant Scheme assistance, tariff checks and small business assistance, as well as some water code amendments to provide additional assistance to consumers during this time. I'll provide a bit of an update on those changes later in the discussion today. I'd also like to acknowledge how much has changed since July and how much continues to change in the external environment in this time. And for many of us based in Melbourne, the last few weeks have been a challenging time readjusting to stage 4 restrictions and obviously seeing fellow community members struggle with the added impact about what these restrictions are having on everybody. So we'll be talking later today about what this has meant for your organisations and your clients, but I think it's important to start today's meeting by reflecting on the impact the restrictions are having across the Victorian community. It seems a long road ahead, but we're certainly all in this together. By way of introductions today, I'd like to introduce my fellow commissioners, senior leaders and commission staff members who are here today and who, like me, are very keen to hear from you again. If you could turn on your cameras, hopefully most of them are anyway, and give us a bit of a wave. My fellow commissioners, Satish Bajani, Simon Corden, Rebecca Billings, our Director of Energy, Sarah McDowell, our Director of Price Monitoring and Regulation, Marcus Crudden, our Director of Victoria Energy Upgrades, Jeff Safai, and our Head of Strategic Communication, Michelle Bryan, our Customer Engagement Project Manager, Lucy, our Project Leads on Consumer and Vulnerability, Jess and Kat, our Engagement Practice Lead, Lisa, and from our Energy team, Catherine and Anne, and from the PMAR team, Sade, Meg and Bobby, our project intern, Mayumi, and our project communication partner, Sam. I'd like to also welcome our attendees for today so everyone knows who's in the room, and I'll go through those now. So I've got Emma and Lauren from the Consumer Policy Research Centre, David from the Brotherhood of St Lawrence, Jared Len from the Victorian Council of Social Service, Kira Stelling from Thriving Communities Partnership, Patrick Sloyan from the Consumer Action Law Centre, and we also see Jared Brody's with us today too. Hi, Jared. We have Lynn Dundon from Financial Counselling Victoria, Dominic Schipano from the Council of Small Business Organisations Australia, Jill Wilson from Community Information and Support Victoria, Laura Burke from the Federation of Community Legal Services, Samantha and Sally from Justice Connect, Melissa and Darcia from West Justice, Leanne from the Victorian Aboriginal Legal Service, Cynthia and Zach from the Energy and Water Ombudsman Victoria, and I think Gavin from St Vincent de Paul might be joining us a bit later. I hope that I've captured everyone. If I haven't, please give a hoy out or put your hand up and we can welcome you as well. We also have some observers from the Australian Energy Regulator, Department of Land, Water and Planning, and the Department of Treasury and Finance. So thanks for being here today. Before we get into the agenda, some quick housekeeping. Please note we're recording today's session so we can share with the Commission. If you have any questions while someone's talking, please feel free to chat them in the chat bar, in that function to share in the group in case we don't get around to everyone. And if you want to ask a question, please feel free to raise your hand either physically or in the chat bar at the bottom of your screen. I think Meg's keeping your microphones muted when you're not speaking, just to avoid some feedback and background noise. Now, to the agenda today. So I wanted to begin today by asking each of you to provide a brief update for 2 to 3 minutes again each. And then we're going to hear from Emma O'Neill from CPRC on the latest consumer and COVID-19 survey results. So thank you for that, Emma. We'll then go into a deeper discussion about the added impact of stage 4 restrictions and what they have meant for you and your clients, any updates on issues being packaged together as pandemic related, as we heard last time around, as well as any updates. I'm particularly keen to hear about any updates on ERG's application experiences by your clients. Then we'd like to give you a brief update on some of the work the Commission has been doing since our last roundtable in July, as well as some insights from the latest data from the businesses that we've been collecting. The last 10 minutes will be an opportunity for any other questions you'd like to raise, or my fellow commissioners may want to ask you some other questions or share some reflections as well from today's discussion. So to the first part of the agenda, an update from the community sector. So I'll ask you to provide us with a 2-minute update on what you're seeing on the ground, but generally if you want to add in a reflection anytime, please feel free to put your hand up. We're actually going to start today, I think, with Kira Sterling from the Thriving Communities Partnership. Hi Kira. Last week, Commissioner Corden joined a conversation with the Energy and Water Ombudsman at a Thriving Communities webinar. So thank you, Cynthia and Kira, for such an interesting and collaborative conversation. We were also lucky enough to have Kira as well as Gerard Brody from Consumer Action Law Centre join us to speak at an internal commission event with our staff to provide their current concerns regarding vulnerability. And this really helped us conceptualise the work Jess and Kat have been doing to develop a vulnerability strategy, which I'll update you a little bit later today on as well. Kira, I'll hand over to you for a bit of an update now, but thanks for joining us.
Thanks, Kate, and thanks to both Simon and Cynthia for being a part of our webinar last week. It was great. I assume it's going to be similar conversations as my my colleagues, but I think we're exceptionally concerned about job seeker rolling back, and then the JobKeeper also rolling back throughout September, December, and then March. We're also very concerned about the differences in how job seeker and JobKeeper are being rolled back, because we do think that it's creating a haves and haves not. Again, we feel like it's really important that the messaging that's coming out is that everyone's in these circumstances because they are the circumstance of life, not because of something that they are doing, you know, right or wrong. So we think there's still a bit of, unfortunately, judgment coming through with people that are going on to job seeker. We know that there is not nearly enough jobs out there. And so I think, you know, we've seen, I think, through the retail market that, for example, energy businesses, a lot of the corporates haven't seen the level of debt that they assumed they would see. They haven't seen, you know, people have been able to pay their bills because of the increased supplements of JobKeeper and JobSeeker, but we are exceptionally worried about what is about to come, and we think that it's going to be there's going to be a huge debt issue that's coming forward as subsidies kind of roll backwards. So that's there. I think there's still a big issue around the kind of the digital divide at the moment. Obviously in Victoria, especially with homeschooling and a whole range of complexities, people are struggling more than they ever have, I think. So I think a whole lot of those things. And again, small businesses. So we're continually getting feedback that small businesses and even that kind of mid-level businesses are going to be at risk of being able to kind of keep on top of their bills. And I think that's going to have a huge flow-on effect. And I think a lot of the stuff that we're seeing is replicating what I know that that Lauren and Emma are going to talk about in their research. So I won't steal any of that thunder. But that's the summary gist. Sorry, I've got another delivery. Always when I'm on remote, a delivery is knocking at my door, so I apologise.
Thanks very much, Kira. No problems at all. Patrick and Gerard from Consumer Action Law Centre, did you want to provide an update today?
Thanks, Kat. And I should introduce Patrick. I'm not sure if this is the first time Patrick's come to one of these events. Many of you will have known Jake, our Senior Policy Officer, who worked with us for energy for many years. He finished up with Consumer Action in July to move back to New Zealand, which is his home. And so we're missing him very much. But welcome Patrick on board. Patrick's been with us for a while, has worked with stuff on the Commission, particularly around water, when the water price review was on, and is now going to be working more on energy issues with us. Jake is in New Zealand doing advocacy on energy over there, so he's working with a consumer organisation, so he's going to stay true to the cause. In terms of our update, we continue to have, I guess, lesser calls than we have had compared to this time last year, about 15 to 20% less. And even we were going back up in July, but in August, the call volumes have gone back a little bit again. And I think that's to do with the same issues we saw early this year around lockdown that we talked about before. We are seeing, I thought I'd just give a couple of examples of calls that we do see. I guess one theme that's coming out, continuing to come out, is those that are missing out on some of the the government stimulus, particularly migrants and international students. So, for example, a call from somebody who is an asylum seeker on a bridging visa, being confused about utility relief grant entitlements, and she'd waited some 10 weeks and her application had been cancelled and didn't know why. And so she was had no income at all, and had overdue gas bills and electricity bills with the retailer, and actually had received a threaten to disconnect in an email. So that's one example. Another one is somebody another person on a bridging visa who'd been in Australia for 2.5 years, spoken. The way she got in touch with us was that she spoke to a maternal health nurse who assisted the client with basics like nappies for her baby, and who gave her our number for further assistance. She had a 4-month-old child. They had no working rights and are not able to get government support. They had assistance from a charity to help pay for rent, and they had problems with debts on their gas bill in particular. So there's just a couple of examples I thought I'd pull out, because I think that is one group that I think we should remind ourselves not everyone gets access to those supports. Quickly, another one is just around debt collection. This relates to an external debt collector, a third party. It wasn't clear for us whether it's actually been sold to them or it's just a contingent debt collector. Pursuing a client over an energy debt where they'd already declared bankruptcy. And so we were able to explain their rights in those circumstances, and also rights around debt collection compensation that people can be ineligible for if there is harassment. But that's something that concerns us, if people are getting that sort of harassment. We were very pleased to see the final decision on supporting energy customers through COVID. So well done for that, ESC. We think that's great. And we're also pleased to see the data that ESC is publishing. That's really helpful. One of the things that we saw was, there seems to be an increase in the ERG applicants in metropolitan Melbourne. And so that's, I guess, an indicator of financial stress out there. And just finally, we continue to work on issues to do with, I know it's not directly within ESC's bailiwick, but issues to do with solar and marketing and sales and complaints in that sector. And there was a piece that we were involved with on the 7:30 report a couple of weeks ago, which then the Federal Minister for Energy has announced a review into some of these issues. So we're interested in following that. Patrick, did you have anything else you want to chime in there?
Thanks, Drew.
Okay, sure.
Thanks for the update, Jared, and welcome to your first roundtable, Patrick. And yes, I've seen you in the media a lot, Jared, so well done. And hopefully on that ERGS issue, that the reforms, which I'll speak a bit about later, will hopefully mean there's a bit more of a streamlining of that process. But we're very keen to keep a really close eye on how that progresses, so that we can, I guess, help community sector as well as departments understand if there are further tweaks that can be made and what we can do to assist in that regard. So we'll be keeping a keen eye on that. Cynthia and Zach from the Energy and Water Ombudsman Victoria. Hi Cynthia, hi Zach. Did you want to provide a bit of an update today at all?
I'm going to let Zach talk. I talk too much.
Hi Zach.
Sure. Hi. Yeah, look out. We're obviously continuing to monitor case numbers really closely and report those weekly to the department and others and the minister. And numbers are still lower now than they were at the same time last year. So we still haven't seen the spike that we're expecting. And when you break them down into the kinds of sub-issues that we're seeing, high billing is far and away our most common complaint sub-issue, which again is very typical for this time of year. And we would expect that to continue through this month and into October. One sub-issue that is has become quite prominent in the last month or so, even 5 or 6 weeks, has been billing concession errors. So we're seeing an overall drop in case numbers, but an increase in that particular sub-issue. The extent that if it were to maintain current trend, we'd be looking at about maybe 500 additional cases for that sub-issue over this year we received last year, and that would be in a year where overall case numbers are down. So that's a sign to us that obviously there are more people who are eligible for concessions, and given the volume, there's obviously more administrative errors taking place with retailers and customers struggling to access their eligible concessions. Often that comes down to things like the name not matching on the bill versus on the healthcare card, and kind of quite frustrating bureaucratic errors, but obviously they have really detrimental real-world impacts for people who are trying to get hold of those concessions. So it's not an avalanche of cases. It's 24, 25 cases a week. It's just unusually prominent compared to other sub-issues. And that's really, that's the headline from us at the moment. It's still a little bit quiet on the Western Front, but we're very mindful that winter gas bills will be coming in soon, and that's going to coincide with the drop in welfare support through JobSeeker and JobKeeper, and that I think has the potential to be quite ugly.
Thanks for the update, Zach, and thanks for being here too, Cynthia. David from the Brotherhood of St Lawrence. Hi, David.
Hi. We are also concerned about JobSeeker lapsing. We had an editorial in the Fairfax papers, or Channel 9 papers now, about the impact that the supplement had on people, and we found it was often really the basic things like affording 3 meals a day, or medicine, or obviously energy, that it had allowed people to access for the first time. So you can imagine the impacts of withdrawing that in the state that the economy is in at the moment. We've been spending a lot of time recently developing the Energy Assistance and Brokerage Program, which we're delivering funded by DELP. So that will assist 3,000 eligible Victorians with 4 types of assistance, including assistance with hardship. So that's getting people into payment difficulty programs, helping people apply for concessions if they haven't applied for them or have errors, and generally representing people's interests to fix billing errors with the retailer. Advice on energy efficiency, helping people find and switch to better offers, and helping people with energy literacy. And we're planning to target the sort of people who fell through the cracks that Gerard mentioned as one of our groups, because we've heard a lot that they're in need of support and often not that familiar with the existing support systems. So we're sort of in the planning phase of the program at the moment. We're hoping it will be up and running in October, and hopefully that will also give us a lot of good insights into how people are experiencing the energy market. Thanks.
Thanks very much, David, for the update. Jared from Victorian Council of Social Service. Are you there, Jared?
I am, Kate. Hello, everyone. It's Jared here. And just, I think it's good to reinforce the comment you made, Kate, about the impact the restrictions are having on all of us personally, as well as the communities that we're working with in Victoria. This is not my first Zoom today. I'm sure it's not that of anyone else's here. There's a human element for all of us. And I just want to reinforce the points that have been made already, Kate, around the importance of the income support at a macro level for Victorians experiencing disadvantage. Very mindful of the overlapping and compounding concerns. For example, the experience of those who had water and power out in the last 2 weeks from the storms, that would have been a pretty stressful period. And so conscious that, we've got some good mechanisms in place, but we need to be looking at what can be done proactively, given what we know about the long tail coming ahead. So I'm going to be interested in that in a deeper dive today. Just to flag also, VCOS is contributing to a live event with ABC Melbourne tonight on getting COVID-related information out to different communities. And also ran a digital forum with DHHS today on community sector operations during the current context. So just to sort of touch on some of those other things, reinforcing the points others have already made around the income support concerns.
Great, thanks very much, Jared. Yes, important that we all look after ourselves during this time too, because we've all been working tirelessly for many months now. So this is also a nice forum too to kind of come together and support each other as well in the roles that we've all got at this important time. So thank you for raising that too. Lynn from Financial Counselling Victoria. Hi, Lynn.
Hi, Sandy's actually here as well, so he'll lead off.
Hello, hi, Sandy.
Hi, Kate. Sorry, I was a couple of minutes late joining.
All
But
good.
thanks for this. It's good to see everyone. That was a pretty ambitious statement there, Kate, about tirelessly working. Hopefully we're maintaining our energy levels at least. So we're, I guess, doing a bunch of things around the work that Brotherhood and CPRC have been doing, linking financial counsellors via kind of training and also exploring the development of, I guess, referral pathways and other things like that with the brokerage services that Brotherhood are doing. And in amongst that, we've re-established our utilities working group, and we're going to be consulting with them extensively around energy issues in an advocacy sense as well. I just note with regard to kind of the access issues that people have been talking about, that our federal body is doing a lot of work to boost the visibility of the National Debt Helpline, and so that will hopefully help enhance accessibility and awareness of things like financial counselling supports for people with debt issues in the community quite widely. And of course, we are quite concerned, as many others are, with the drop in JobSeeker, the changes to JobKeeper, and also the impending sort of the drop of post-winter power bills that's all sort of looming in the coming sort of month or so. I think we're going to see some things hit there. We're planning to hold a hardship forum probably in mid-October with the energy retailers. That's part of a series of hardship forums that we're planning to try and engage with industry sectors around how they're responding to people in hardship and working with financial counsellors around enhancing responsiveness in those sorts of areas. We're mindful there's been raised with us a potential issue with retailers not accepting verbal authorisation or authority from financial counsellors. That's something that we're looking into. Not sure if that's a widespread issue or not, but we do know there've been wider issues with creditor organisations and enhancing sort of access to authorisations in the COVID context where clients don't have easy access necessarily to the internet. And we certainly have a strong view that flexible authorisation arrangements are desirable in this context. So that's something that we'll keep looking into. The last thing I wanted to mention was just, I guess, being mindful that there's another kind of group of people being impacted in the community with hardship, and that's the people placed into isolation or quarantine. State government, of course, has made payments to those people. And I've flagged with DHHS just a question about whether or not they should look at enabling access to ERGs for that group of people. And I think there's probably a bit of work that could be done to kind of just check on their sort of well-being in terms of hardship issues, and especially around energy. So that's just something that's been a little bit in my mind of, like I said, just sort of flag with DHHS. But there's some work maybe to follow up further on that.
Thanks, Sandy. What has been the practical implications of that, perhaps that non-flexible approach to getting authorisations from financial counsellors? Have you seen examples where there hasn't been able to be the assistance provided, or has it just taken a bit longer to make sure that happens?
Look, to be honest, I don't know. I mean, what I've heard is Del had someone approach them and they passed that through Department of Justice to us that the financial counsellor had a problem from an energy retailer not accepting a verbal authority. That's all I know. I don't know. I hadn't heard of a particular issue with that regarding energy authorities. I mean, we had a whole lot of stuff that we did a couple of months ago with our federal body around updating the authorisation processes and forms with the banks, and having those sorts of systems set up to broadly work across the creditor organisations. And we've pushed quite hard to enable verbal authorities to be recognised and having processes to sort of enable that to happen. It's not always easy to do that. You have creditor organisations and they've got their legal and privacy compliance areas who get concerned about, you know, is there a trail and can we actually justify the authorisation being given and so forth. So it's not always that easy to sort out. I hadn't been particularly conscious that there was an issue in the energy sector with that, beyond what's there generally with creditors. Like I said, there's just been one case that's been brought to my attention, but not from my membership, from DELP. So we just need to sort of check that out. But I'll obviously raise that if we're seeing an issue with that.
Thanks, Sandy. And on your opening remark too, I feel like my tank's a little bit low, but that's probably not all due to work, probably due to the homeschooling wearing a bit thin in my household with 2 primary school age boys, but we'll get there hopefully with some news this weekend maybe. And I'm sure that many around the table are in the same boat, but all good. Thanks, Sandy and Lynn. I don't think we've got Jill from the Community Information and Support Victoria, Meg. Is that right? I can't see Jill. Yep, and Laura from the Federation of Community Legal Services, unless you're there, I'm not sure that you've joined us either. No, so, but I can see Dominic from the Council of Small Business Organisations Australia. Welcome, Dominic.
Thank you, Kate. Thank you, everybody, for having these sessions. These are very, very informative. I just want to add a couple of things. Firstly, I agree with what Kiara and everybody else is saying. There is that September cliff, as we keep calling it, and there's a fear that JobKeeper and JobSeeker is going to have a huge impact on people, especially sole traders and small businesses. I want to break it up into a national issues and then local issues. One of the sleepers that's happening is that we've heard there's going to be mutual recognition of licensing across Australia. Our concern is going to be that unless companies actually ask for proper licensing systems in the utilities and the telco area, we're going to have people saying that they've got the licenses but actually may not have, or we'll have a race to what we call the bottom in terms of recognition of licenses. So we need to make sure we've got the right skills for those people. So that's something we need to look at. An example I can give you is that Airtasker has actually starting to advertise, or not them, but people are advertising through Airtasker, that they can do electrical work as an example, or telco work. And the problem is that in Queensland, one person who said that he had a license didn't have a license because nobody checked it, and the actual house got burnt down because he did a bad job. So just keep that in mind. It's a sleeper, but it's one of the things that we need to look at in terms of essential services. From a local point of view, there is a fear that in Victoria, if there's a stage 4 extension, that some businesses will actually definitely close because JobKeeper will actually be cut. So, you know, there's a concern there about, you know, consumers being able to access materials, etc. There is a if you like, an issue around the ports at the moment, because there's a lot of materials are being held at the ports at the moment, not being delivered to consumers. So the supply chain is currently being frustrated, can I say, which has resulted in price gouging, which means there's a lot of consumers are now going to be hit with higher prices, and those people have tried online. And my wife was telling me as an example, Bunnings was saying that they would deliver prior to the coronavirus for $30. Now it's $170 to deliver something. So, you know, just be aware that there is going to be that little bit of price gouging. New South Wales, as an example, is now looking at the price gouging legislation. So maybe it's something, Kate, that you can sort of pick up as something to look at. The other concern that's happening is what we're going to do if we have another fire or we have another disaster like we did with the water situation with Yarra Valley. You know, where is the recovery plan? What is the plan that we're going to look at to make sure that we don't have the concerns that we had last year? So if you got, you know, the fire, then the coronavirus, and then, you know, another fire, et cetera, we're going to be facing a lot of economic issues here in Victoria. So basically that's it. You know, if there's any questions, I'll be happy to answer them. But yeah, I'll just reiterate with everybody else. I think everybody's just tired.
Thanks, Dominic. Thanks for making the time to be here today and provide the, reflections on the business community. I'd like to talk later about some of the, new reforms we've been putting in place to add some protections and assistance for small businesses too during this time, and I'll touch on that later. Thank you, Dominic. I think we have Sally from Justice Connect. Sally, are you there?
I am. Thanks for having me. It's also my first roundtable representing for Justice Connect, but lots of familiar faces, so hello. Okay, so we've had a really busy couple of months. From the advocacy side of things, they're particularly related to the protections for tenants under the new COVID-19 additions to the Residential Tenancies Act. We've also been working, I think, with West Justice too, who are here, and some of the other community legal centres around pausing any enforcement review for fines during this period. We have seen an influx of rough sleepers who've gone into temporary accommodation, and because they're linking in with workers and having a bit of stability, we're seeing them present with some legal issues that they've had for a while, like fines and lots of energy debts, which is really good that we're able to connect with them. We've also commenced a rough sleepers phone line for them and their workers to access for legal advice. As some of you know, we have an online tool called Dear Landlord that we've been running since last year, but we saw a massive spike in access to it from around April onwards for people. I think 58% of people who accessed it identified that they were going to be missing a rent payment, and a lot of people trying to juggle expenses between rent and their other bills, and obviously increased energy services being that they're in the home so much more day to day. So we've used that information and we've updated those resources. So now it's kind of this huge beast of information where people can access help to, negotiate payment plans with landlords, how to request a rent reduction, how to go about the VCAT process when hearings are online and all that kind of stuff. So that's continuing to develop. I think at the next roundtable, we're going to give you a bit of a broader presentation of what that is looking like. We're also seeing an increase in service delivery. So for our usual legal assistance and social work support, we did have a quiet period, but it's now ramped up again. And we are seeing people still getting, still facing eviction, just for mostly different reasons than prior to COVID. So a lot less for falling behind in rent and a lot more for other reasons. What else? And yeah, we're now just preparing for what happens when restrictions are lifted, and also very concerned about the job seeker issues, and when the tenancy protections run out, whether we're going to see just an influx of people who are suddenly facing eviction.
Thanks for the update and thanks for being here, Sally. Welcome to the roundtable. I think we've got Darcia from West Justice with us. Are you there, Darcia?
Yes, I am. Hi, everyone. My name's Darcia. I am the project lawyer for our Economic Abuse Clinic at West Justice. I guess the clinics that we're seeing the biggest amount of essential services issues is through our consumer clinic, our economic abuse clinic, our mortgage wellbeing clinic, financial counselling clinics and tenancy clinic. I guess a lot of the issues that we're seeing are similar to what Jared's already stated. We're seeing a cohort of people who are not eligible for government assistance and who have lost their jobs and are now experiencing extreme forms of hardship. So obviously affordability of essential services has become a pretty big issue for that cohort of people who might be relying on things like the Salvation Army grants. We're also seeing some issues around enforcement and debt collection. So people who are being contacted or harassed quite a number of times a day, which obviously is adding quite significant stresses to a lot of people at this time in particular, where there are already so many other external stresses that they might be facing. There's been a few concession areas that we've picked up lately. And of course, affordability is becoming more and more of a problem with whole families who have to stay at home where they would usually be out during the day. So we're quite concerned about what's going to kind of come post September as well. That's about all from me.
Thanks very much, Darcia. Thanks for being here. I can see Leanne from Victorian Aboriginal Legal Service. How are you going, Leanne?
I'm muting. I'm good. Thank you. So I think I'll just start by saying legal issues aside, and obviously, you know, what we expect is going to be this massive rush of legal matters coming up in the future as well. And, you know, then we've got community members who, you know, may not have access to internet and things like that. You know, those sort of issues aside, and that digital divide that's been raised in this conversation, I think our biggest concerns have sort of been relayed here as well. They're around these pending debts, you know, the job seeker payments stopping, and, you know, Jared was mentioning earlier about the macro sort of level impact. However, I am aware that some of the issues that tenants in particular are facing at the moment, for us as an organisation, we're concerned around what's considered a maintenance priority matter in relation to tenancy. So it has to be a really significant sort of maintenance issue in order for someone to, you know, have something addressed at their house, you know, water pouring out, or, you know, some very big issue taking place before services are able to respond. That's one. We're also looking at trying to be really proactive around, you know, that energy literacy, you know, as David was talking about before, and trying to get in front of this. That's what VALs are hoping to do. So I'm really hoping to speak to Sandy at some point as well about some of the programs that they're running. However, the biggest concerns for us is the income's going to stop. And it's a bit like what I was saying to someone the other day, is that a lot of people, and I'm aware that a lot of our community members are signing up to things like Afterpay, and all these payments are being done online currently at the moment, of people, you know, buying things and purchasing things and joining up with different plans, and you know what I mean? And I think these debts are actually going to manifest themselves in a different way. So whether or not it comes through a tenancy or not being able to pay off their gas bill and electricity bill because they're not prioritising, you know, the essential services first, which, you know, we'd hope they would. However, that's our biggest concern, is that people are spending money or locking themselves into issues that are going to create massive debts. And, you know, whether or not that's coming through, as I said, that they can't pay their rent, or they fall behind on their gas or their electricity. So we really want to try and be proactive and get ahead of that. What's concerning is that our civil team aren't getting any higher number, if anything, a less amount of inquiries. And that's what really concerns me. It's almost like this dark figure of people at the moment that we're just not aware of. So we're not hearing the complaint numbers that we'd expect to. Normally we'd have more people raising more issues of debts and, you know, having problems with energy providers and things like that. But it's gone really quite quiet. And that's what concerns me in particular, is when it goes quiet, we know it's before a storm of things that are going to take place. And as I said, my concern is because, you know, there's additional funding at the moment, everyone's spending it, it's all okay. And as we know, previous reports have shown that the lower the debts are, I think I've got this right, the smaller debts are the ones that are getting consistently delayed. And to me, that's sort of indicative of, it's people who are on less income, you know what I mean, that are consistently putting off those bills and things like that, which is just going to have a roll-on effect because the bills are still there, as we know. And the other thing that concerns me, and I have heard about it, is the concession and the flexible authorisation. Just as an organisation, it's been a very big challenge for us to get that flexible authorisation going. However, I have heard back from community, and I've also had a few family members that have had difficulty when dealing with financial counsellors and those credit to try and get the authorisation, you know, that authorization through so things can start moving. That's been an issue for us, and the concession as well. So we have had a few issues where people's concessions seem to have dropped off, either because they haven't been sent out a new healthcare card or something like that, or the healthcare card hasn't been properly attached, you know, to the person within their household, etc. So I could just sort of summarize it and just say that all the concerns that all the other organisations have are obviously the concerns that we have. However, I think the biggest one is that it has gone quiet, and you know, where we'd normally have more issues coming up within our civil area, it's actually very quiet, which concerns me. So yeah, thank you.
Thanks for the update, Leanne. I certainly, that seems to mirror some of the reflections EWOL have been making for some time in terms of levels of complaints, and that doesn't seem to have changed either, Cynthia or Zach. No. Yep.
No, they're still sitting quite low. The concession card issues are the same that we're seeing. Kate, we are starting to see the challenges coming through in the form of complaints around authority as well. So we're working with individual businesses to try and get them to assess how realistic the risk of talking to a financial counsellor is when they're looking for authority, written authority, because it just to me seems to be a blocker to actually coming up with sensible outcomes. So that's the approach we're taking at the moment. There's one particular retailer who, I think it was State Trustees flagged with me the other day, they're planning on shutting down some of their email addresses because they're looking to move everybody into web chat and phone based, which again impacts on the ability of State Trustees in this instance to be able to get things like account balances and to be forwarding through authorities when they have them. So I'll keep this group informed of how we go on those issues, but it is something that we're seeing, albeit at a very small level at this point as well.
Thanks, Cynthia. Seems to be a bit of a theme of what we're hearing today. Sarah McDowell, we're obviously having lots of discussions with energy businesses at the moment and workshops and whatnot. Perhaps this is something we can pick up and sort of do a bit of a deep dive on to understand what the issue is and what can be done.
No, I think that's right. And I think the case that was mentioned before potentially came from our dear friends at EWOB that went to DELP. So yeah, we haven't heard of it, you know, just really up until recently, and particularly, you know, because of the extra emphasis now on ensuring financial counsellors can support customers at this time. It's obviously critical that we ensure that customers can use financial counsellors to manage their energy bills or their financial hardship arrangements. So look, we're also looking for a practical outcome too. You know, there are a number of workshops being scheduled, so we feel that's probably a really useful forum to, you know, speak to industry about this really important issue. You know, the other option, of course, that's open to us is putting out some guidance to industry on this particular matter. So we're just, you know, exploring it a bit further, but certainly with workshops coming up, this will certainly be discussed.
Thanks very much, Sarah. Thanks, Cynthia. I think we actually have Kate from Domestic Violence Victoria. Kate, I didn't know you were on the line before, but I think you may have joined us. Are you there, Kate?
Yes, I am. I'm just trying to turn my video back on. I'm not sure what's happened. Anyway, we'll just leave that. Yeah, so hi everyone. It's been a while since I've been able to attend one of these, so it's good to see everyone's faces. Just some quick updates from DV Vic. We share everyone's concerns with, there we go, share everyone's concerns with the end of job keeper and job seeker and the cliff that people will fall off. I think particularly we've been trying to draw attention to the impact of this on women with a lot of partners, particularly some of the data coming through suggests that women have been losing their jobs at 4 to 5 times the rate of men. And obviously, as Kate, I think you alluded to, the compounding impact of having kids at home and a lot of women having to reduce their hours to be able to balance those home responsibilities. And in many cases, particularly for single parent families, not really being in a financial position to be able to do that, but needing to just manage their sanity. And our workforce is being impacted by that just as much as anyone. So really seeing the impact on our worker well-being from working remotely and all the things that come with that. At the same time, the trends into the system, whilst the numbers aren't necessarily up, they are kind of back to pre-COVID levels. And we are seeing kind of most importantly, a really high proportion of high risk come through and just increased complexity, which is taking up a lot of extra resources to support those victim survivors adequately. So I don't know if that's been reflected in other services. We're also seeing an increased rate of third parties calling our services concerned about friends or family members that can't reach out for support. So that's really concerning. And yeah, continuing to kind of monitor that situation. So we don't have too much more relevant to the work of the EAC particularly, but certainly could share all the concerns about the broad economic impacts that this is having across the community. Yep. Thanks.
Thanks for being here again, Kate, and the update. Certainly had a couple of roundtables with the water and energy businesses recently in the context of the new reforms and new rules, and I took the opportunity at that time to make sure that businesses understood that the existing rules are still there, irrespective of the ones we're introducing as well, and sort of shone a bit of a light on those protections in place for customers who might be subject to family violence at the moment, that there's a really keen eye that the businesses are sort of shining on that as well. So I wanted to talk about that a little bit later, because that was something that was raised at the last roundtable we had, that sometimes there's been some suggestion that family violence or mental health issues are sort of being packaged together in relation to COVID pandemic type issues. So if we don't cover that now, we can perhaps cover that later on. I'd be really keen to hear what updates there are on that particular issue as well.
Yeah, unfortunately, I have to step out. I've got to go to another meeting, so I'm really sorry to miss that discussion, but happy to hopefully make it to the next one of these, and happy to provide any kind of insight offline. So.
Yep, thanks very much, Kate. If there's anything else you wanted to add on that issue, then if you won't be here for that later, is that something that you're hearing through your organisation, that this issue is sort of being missed in the context of the broader pandemic aspects of assistance at the moment?
In terms of mental illness and family violence being lumped together.
Yeah, and family violence sort of being missed in the context of a customer needing assistance for other pandemic related reasons, that family violence wasn't being given the priority that it needed to be in usual times.
I think we've heard a bit of both. I think we've heard from other services that they've actually seen an increase in some cases in their clients disclosing family violence when they've presented to, say, an alcohol or drug or mental health service or a financial counselling service, because they haven't been able to seek help in the normal channels. So that's probably a little opposite to what you've heard. The flip side of that is that everyone has had to scale back what they're doing to support people in this time because of the demand and the impacts on their workforces. So that has probably resorted in some services reverting back to what they would consider their core business. And if family violence isn't included in that, then perhaps those sort of cross-sectoral linkages aren't being made as well. Certainly we're seeing a lot of increased mental illness present in the cohort that we work with. So when victim survivors do come into our services, they're experiencing higher level of anxiety and uncertainty. And so that's really worrying. And we have found it difficult, I think, to broker in the same sort of wraparound supports that we would in normal circumstances, because all the service sectors are really kind of operating on reduced capacity. So it is sort of harder to broker in those supports for people. Yeah.
Thanks for your reflections, Kate. We'll see you next time, hopefully.
Great. Thanks very much. Sorry, I have to go. Bye.
No problem at all. All good. I was going to turn to Gavin, but I don't think from St Vincent de Paul, but I think he might be a bit late, so I don't think he's joined us yet, Meg. So unless I've missed anyone, if you wanted to put your hand up, I think we've got to the end of our sort of update, but I found that very useful just to have a touch point on where things are at the moment. So thank you for all those reflections. It's really incredibly valuable for us to hear all of that directly from you. I know that many of you here today, I just wanted to mention, have been participating in our subgroup meetings in relation to information sharing to support potential enforcement action with Commissioner Bajani, and I also wanted to just thank those around the table who have been participating in those subgroups as well. So thank you. Next part of the agenda, and watching the time as well, we're really fortunate to have the opportunity to hear from Lauren Solomon and Emma O'Neill from the Consumer Policy Research Centre today. And CPRC have been conducting monthly consumer surveys to measure the financial impacts and consumer experiences during the pandemic. So hi, Emma and Lauren. And we've asked them to provide us with a bit of a longer update today to hear some recent results from your COVID-19 and Consumers from Crisis to Recovery report. So thank you, Lauren and Emma. I think I'm handing over to you for about 15 or 20 minutes, I think, just to take us through the survey. So, and we might take some questions after that, if that's okay with you, in case there's anything that comes up during your presentation. So I'll hand over to you. Thank you, Lauren and Emma.
Thanks, Kate. Thanks, Kate. I think Emma's going to present, and I'll just jump in at the end, and we'll try and keep it to 15, so you've got time to address maybe some of those other topics you'd like to get to too, Kate. So I'll do my best to share my screen. Can you see that, everyone, or not just yet? Can everyone see that?
That's perfect. Thank you, Emma.
And I'll try to actually pop it in. How's that looking?
Looks good.
Yep. Okay, then. It's always a bit of a leap of faith sharing the screen. But here we go. And thank you very much, Kate and team, for inviting us along today. And really looking forward to hearing people's reactions to our latest survey findings. So this is a bit of a snapshot and seeing whether, it's resonating with what you're seeing in your work. Some of the comments just then suggest that it is. So that'd be really good to hear. So just, I might, before going to that slide, just to give you a bit of a recap on what this survey is all about. So it's a monthly survey. We've been running it since May. It surveys over 1,000 people each month. It's cross-sector, so it's looking at energy, telco, mortgages, credit providers, insurance. Rental housing is another big one. And some of the key demographic groups it looks at, across gender, different age groups, the experiences of people whose incomes have been affected by COVID, different housing tenure types, people with disability, a range of demographic groups. So we've been putting out monthly briefers with the latest survey findings. So on just last Friday, we put out our briefer about the July results. So I'll take you, that was at a national level. I'll take you in this presentation through some of the key Victorian findings, which tell a slightly different story, as you could anticipate. So first of all, looking at people's general concerns about the impact of COVID on their financial wellbeing. So we're seeing a huge number of Victorians now who are concerned at some level. So that's either somewhat concerned or very concerned. So looking at 74% for July. So it's significantly up on 62% in May and 64% in June. And the big thing there is that we're looking at 31% of Victorians who are very concerned about the impact of COVID on their financial wellbeing. So it's a big percentage of the population. And we are seeing those elevated concerns in Victoria relevant to the national level. Not unexpected, given the rate of outbreaks and the economic effects in Victoria. I mean, this is obviously pre-stage 4 restrictions, so we'll have to wait to see what the August data shows, which we're looking at the moment. But yeah, there are those elevated concerns. And a consistent theme in this survey is higher levels of concern among casual workers, so at 84%, renters at 76%, people with disability at 76% as well. Young people, this was an area we focused on in our latest briefer, the disproportionate effects on young people of COVID, the economic effects. And we're also seeing those concerns among mortgage holders as well. And please jump in at any point if you have any reflections, or happy to hold it over until the end. Turning to the individual bill concerns, so we're running this question every second month. So the first month we ran this question was May, and housing and energy came out as the chief concerns, and that's remained the case in July. So what we're seeing is, again, elevated concerns in Victoria compared with a national level. So 42% of consumers are concerned about their energy payments. So this is quite a jump from May, where it was 33%. And then those concerns as well around rental payments and mortgage payments. So we're talking 50% of Victorian renters are concerned about how they're going to manage their rental payments. And also those common concerns about other key household expenses. So it really is that story of, you know, multi-sector financial pressures. What we do each month is we ask people, well, what steps are you taking to manage your essential household expenses? So this ranges from things like, are you dipping into your savings? Are you using a credit card or buy now, pay later? Are you borrowing from family or friends? Are you having to sell household goods, or if you have investments, you're having to sell those? Have you applied for early access to super? Are you having to close or cancel both discretionary or essential or more essential services like insurance? So there's some pretty clear trends that have come through since May, and that's consistently, you know, high use of credit cards or buy now, pay later, people dipping into saving, and people closing or cancelling services. So, you know, dipping into savings has remained at 32%. And that's roughly where it was in May as well. It's notable that, so this is the Victorian data, you know, 10% of Victorians have applied for early access to super. So what we're seeing is, you know, quite common use of finite resources. And I think this is part of the cliff as well, is that we're going to run into this problem where not only are those, you know, the job seeker supplements going to taper and then be withdrawn, JobKeeper's coming down, there's, yeah, these finite resources will run out around the same time. You know, the early super access will be exhausted. So there are a number of things that are going to come to a head over the next few months and into the new year. Again, we're seeing those subgroups do these things at higher rates than the general population. So for example, as we discussed in our latest briefer, young people are 3 times as likely, and when we say young people, that's 18 to 34-year-olds, are 3 times as likely to be using payday loans, twice as likely to be using personal loans and borrowing from family and friends. That's national figures. And similarly, you know, casual workers, much more likely to be dipping into savings, like half of casual workers borrowing from family and friends and accessing super early. So that's like 20% of casual workers have been doing that. So, you know, these quite extreme steps are being taken, and there's only so much more you can eke out of these things. So then looking at some particular experiences in the energy sector, the first point there is that we're seeing a big jump in the number of Victorians who are taking some kind of action to manage their energy costs. So that includes things like switching your plan, switching provider, applying for payment assistance, applying for a concession. So that's jumped from 8% in June to 24% in July, and it is much higher than the national rate, or significantly higher than the national rate. It's jumped nationally, but it's still higher than that national rate. And so it's a bit of it's a good news story and it's a bad news story, because something we've noticed from the beginning is that there has been this gulf between the percentage of people who are concerned about their energy bills and then the percentage who are taking some kind of action. But it can also indicate a lot greater need as well. So it's a mix of news here, I think. So some of the particular actions we've seen a rise in are those applications for government concessions. So 9% of people reported that, so that's up from only 2%. In June, switching is going up in the energy sector and right across the board. So we're seeing that more in telco, insurance. People are much more active now. Hopefully that results in a better deal. In some cases it may not, but you know, it does really underscore the importance of those protections in the energy market and elsewhere. So switching rates, you know, 8 or 7%, so really quite high. Something we are also seeing a rise in across most sectors, if not all, are missed payments. So 6% of Victorians had to miss an energy payment in July, and that's up from 2%. And as we think it's as we see more people take action, there are more people reporting some kind of negative experience with their energy provider. So that might be like the big things here are the lengthy call and chat and email wait times, just generally unhelpful providers or poor service, and there are a number of other things. So it's now the case that, you know, 20% of Victorians were reporting this in July. So look, there could be a few things going on here. That increased demand. It may be that just, you know, a number of service providers were not prepared for the scale of vulnerability and need we're experiencing now. We would hope that, you know, some of those issues around onshoring that we faced at the start of COVID would be being resolved now, but we are still seeing, you know, those really lengthy waiting times. This is an issue across sectors. So there's still work to do there. Telco is probably the standout one in terms of the poor experiences, and we're really seeing that in the August data that's coming through. And then turning to what actions are energy providers taking. Pleasingly, we are seeing more positive actions from energy providers being reported in July by consumers, so 21%, so that's up from 8% in June, which was a really pleasing finding. So that includes people reporting receiving helpful information about managing usage or payments, so that was at 10%, up from 5%. Proactive offers of payment assistance have gone up, so to 6%, up from 3%, but this is still a pretty low rate. But equally, as those positive actions emerge, we are seeing some reports of more negative actions, and a number of the pieces of feedback today around, you know, debt collection being on the rise and things like that. I think we are starting to see that come through in this survey. So in terms of like some kind of negative action being reported, that was at 17%, so up from 7%, and they are elevated in Victoria. So some of the big things there are increased cost of service, so 8%. Now, we can't say whether that's, you know, the price has gone up or people are just reporting high bills. Like, it may be at this point in time, after several months of working from home, winter bill costs, people are saying, yeah, I've noticed my energy bill's gone up. But we are seeing unsolicited pressure sales and calls being reported more, so 6%. And something that's not shown here, and we're still working out what's going on, is we are seeing an uptick in the reports of debt collection being used, and again we're also seeing these reports come through of disconnections as well. So we're trying to work out, because we know that with the latest ESC data there have been no disconnections in Victoria. So we're not quite sure what's going on there, and I think it's something we'll monitor over August and the coming months. So there's some of the main findings about energy over July. This is national data, and it's cross-sector. So something we've been looking at since May is, okay, there are these negative experiences overall, but what does the experience look like for people who are accessing payment assistance? And a caution, these are fairly low sample sizes here, but what we are consistently seeing is higher rates of negative experiences for people who seek payment assistance. So in the energy sector there, so it's the darker teal dots. So in the energy sector in July, 66% of Australian consumers who sought payment assistance had some kind of negative experience with their provider. So that was up quite significantly from 46% in May and 31% in June. So that will be things like the call wait times, poor service, things like that. So there's something going on there as well that really needs to be rectified. So there's some of the big findings. Lauren may have things to add on top of that, but yeah, really keen to hear your thoughts on how this tallies or doesn't tally, or insights you can provide based on your frontline experiences, and also the data that the ESC's seeing come in.
Yeah, I think the only thing I just add to that really briefly is look, I think the thing that really kind of hit home in the last month in July was the very noticeable jump in concerning actions by young people to manage household bills. So jumps in taking on high, cost, high risk credit. So we're seeing them take out payday loans and consumer leases at 3 times the rate of the general population, taking out personal loans at a rate twice the general population, but young people were also just outright missing household bill payments across every sector at the rate of 2 to 3 times the general population. So just really clearly coming through with the distributional impacts on a generational level now, and I think that's only going to exacerbate over the coming months as obviously the JobKeeper and JobSeeker comes through, but it's just that the basic fact that young people had less of a reserve going into this, they're the only group that have had their real wages kind of go backwards in the last 10 years. So I just think that we really probably need to think about how we're targeting our support to groups that are overexposed. And as Emma said, it's young people, renters, casual workers, people with a disability keeps coming through in our survey, but also the longer term distributional impacts that are clearly hitting some groups more than others, and who pays for it through time as well from a policy level. And the only other thing just to mention is we have had really good participation on our Energy Simplified webinar. So a huge thanks to everyone around the virtual table who's helped us kind of get the word out about that. Carl and the team have already held 13 of those webinars. So a big thank you there. But that was it. That's all I wanted to say. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Emma and Lauren. Really interesting insights and fairly sobering at the same time, but really important so that we know what's going on, so we can try and, as you say, get the assistance where it needs to go. I wonder, are there any questions generally that the group would like to ask Emma or Lauren, or share some reflections? Feel free to put your hand up in the chat bar. And Meg, you can let me know if anyone puts their hand up. While you're having a think, I was thinking about the energy costs only second to the housing costs being of concern to consumers, and but that the good news that Victorians are taking more action to manage their energy costs. But the 5 consumer experience, was it 20% finding that experience to be a negative one with their energy provider? That's fairly disappointing. I'm wondering if those negative experiences are because of the outcome of what they were seeking didn't sort of arise, or was it difficulty navigating or accessing the support that is there? Not necessarily. We probably don't know the answers. I think, Emma, you were saying, maybe it's because of increased demand for services, the quality's not there, perhaps. But I wonder if there are any other reflections from Emma or Lauren, or more broadly from what entities are saying for their customers' experiences with energy retailers at the moment.
Yeah, I mean, I think from my end, the only thing I just mentioned is it tends to be the highest common reported negative experiences tend to be things like the wait times have been too high, or difficulty navigating the phone and web system, and those sorts of things tend to come up highest in the rankings. But I would say as well, it's just really interesting to me that there was a jump in negative experiences across every single sector in July. Every single sector. So like 33% of the Australian population reported some form of negative experience with an essential service provider in July, which is pretty big. So it feels to me like it's not, as Emma said, it's probably more people reaching out, so that's obviously going to impact, you know, the proportion reporting negative experiences, but it feels like there could just be a group that's really struggling, and they're struggling across every single one of those sectors and not getting access, you know, to what they need as well.
Yeah. I think there's that longer term question there about, well, you know, as discussed earlier on, you know, what happens when we have multiple or recurring large scale events like a pandemic, like a bushfire, like a flood. So how do you build in those mechanisms across industry and regulation and elsewhere that allows you to scale up that support quite rapidly? And we've probably been caught a bit unawares with this one, that, you know, it's something we'll just need to build into all systems over the years and decades ahead.
Thanks, Emma and Lauren. Meg, can you help me? Has anyone else got their hand up or wanted to make a comment? Oh yes, I can see Patrick from Calc.
Thanks, Kate. Thanks, Emma and Lauren. I just wanted to interrogate that one. So the higher numbers of people switching providers to manage costs, do we know that they're switching to better deals? So I guess in my mind, and thinking about the calls we're getting, is that people are having quite bad experiences with a lot of retailers. And we had one woman the other week that switched retailers and had a lot of problems with the debt with the old retailer. So I wonder if people are trying to get rid of a retailer that's not helping them, or their bill's high, and they think by switching that might resolve it.
Yeah, potentially.
It lines up with that negative experience being, what was it, Emma? 8% of people said that the cost of service was increased. So potentially, like,
and the unsolicited calls.
And the unsolicited calls, yeah, exactly. So you might be seeing some flow through from that. But yeah, it's the age-old problem with the switching data, is we don't know whether people have a positive outcome or not. Yeah. But yeah, it's something we're seeing across all sectors.
My only other comment was reflecting in your data, and also what Leanne said earlier, seeing a lot of young people with buy now, pay later debts in particular, and that's something we're pretty worried about.
It's Jared here, just to add to that point about people switching, you know, if they switch and they've still got debts to the previous retailer, just to emphasize this point, then they often lose the consumer protections under the retail code because they're no longer a customer. And you know, that's when the debt collection harassment sort of, because it goes off to an external debt collector. So I think that's an issue to be aware of.
Thanks, Patrick and Jared. Any other questions or reflections for Emma or Lauren?
Kira's got her hand up, Kate.
Sorry, who has?
Kira.
Oh, Kira. I think on my screen's struggling to see everyone in hands and chat bar, but hi, Kira.
Hi, Kate. Amazing research. I actually really value the research coming out of CPRC at the moment. It's so interesting. And so thank you for bringing it to this forum, Kate, and thanks to the CPRC. The negative experience thing and the whole kind of call wait times, I think we're seeing that across all industries. And I think the interesting thing about the COVID landscape is I think every organisation is feeling the pain of having people working from home, and every industry has, you know, especially in the customer service industry, there's a very high instance of women in the customer service industry, and therefore they're also battling with, you know, with the balance of, you know, and we can all be like, well, you know, suck it up. But the reality is that the more we say suck it up, the more women that are going to be impacted by losing their jobs, because it's going to be a disproportionate impact. So it's a really complex thing to understand. How do we, because we're also pushing, and then you couple that with unsolicited calls, and we're pushing industries at the moment to say you've got to be reaching out to people and offering payment arrangements. You've got to be getting in now and trying to support them before all of the subsidies end. And what we're definitely hearing it from the banking sector at the moment, that when they're doing those calls and they're doing it with the intent of getting in and trying to provide support, people are feeling that's unsolicited. So I think that it's an interesting challenge for, I think, us as an industry to think about, us as the community sector industry and regulators to think about, how do we manage that? Because we want, I think we want retailers reaching out to offer support. I think we know that they're all recruiting up. So everyone we speak to is recruiting up in their hardship space. And they're trying to, I guess, get people resourced up to take those calls. But how do we all be a part of the making sure that the good is happening for the people and that we're connecting them in? I don't know the answer to that. I don't know if CPRC, if your research can kind of deep dive in at any point in how we can communicate differently to make sure people are accepting those offers, and how do we increase trust so that people will accept the offers, I guess, as part of that too. I mean, it's more just posing, I don't know the answer, but I'm like, how do we do something about this? Because it's going to get worse, and we need people to answer the calls, and we need them to get, I think, on payment arrangements and to get the ergs and to get access to concession.
I don't know if anyone from the ESC wanted to comment on some of the things they're exploring in the survey. I know there's that question, an open-ended question around, well, if you were facing payment difficulty, what would assist you from your retailer? I don't know, Anna, if you wanted to comment on that at all. No problems if not.
Look, Emma, like I can make a couple of reflections. The answer is, I suppose, yes, we are looking at it. You know, we think that's, you know, a critical issue for us to be focusing on at this point in time, about how you actually get the customer to, you know, engage, you know, with their retailer. And in fact, you know, I spoke to the Australian Energy Council about this, so yesterday or the day before, about looking at how we can collaborate on this very issue. So I think it's something that we all have the same objective. And I'm really looking forward to seeing how, you know, we can work with yourselves as well as industry on trying to solve that critical problem. So certainly some of the work that the CPRC is doing, you know, with us on this really critical issue is going to be critical to inform, you know, what we do next in relation to what kind of, you know, tests, what trials we're going to do, hopefully in collaboration with industry, to try and solve that really important problem.
Yeah. And I think here as well, like from the TCP end, like I've just been finding those webinars fantastic, and sharing those cross-sector lessons are so important. And I was just reflecting before the session today, actually, I got a really good email from my insurer today, and it was specifically targeted at Victorians and with offers of support and, you know, what the various forms of support look like. It was really well worded. I thought really hit the mark, and think, well, I haven't received something like that from my energy provider yet. Why? I don't know.
Shoot it across, Emma, and we'll get it out.
There's no more hands up, but we've got just a quick point of curiosity from Simon about the high pressure sales calls. Simon, do you have a specific question for Emma, or?
Yeah, it was more broadly, do we know, is it one or two providers that are doing these high pressure sales calls, or is it a more general problem? Emma, I'm guessing you don't know from your survey, but others might know, because if there's one or two retailers that are, you know, we'd been told in industry forums that they were refocusing their call centre staff on dealing with inbound calls rather than outbound calls. But if one or two retailers are putting pressure on consumers in an inappropriate way, we'd be keen to know who they are, I think. May not want to share it in this forum, but I think we'd be keen if you could tell us offline if any of the consumer groups or community groups are aware of particular retailers. That would be very helpful.
I mean, this is probably a bit anecdotal, but some of our calls, we've had people on payment plans, existing payment plans, and some of the bigger providers, so I'd have to check the names, seem to be proactively calling these customers, trying to get them on higher payment plans. So two pensioners, for example, and they're trying to get them onto higher ones. It was totally unrealistic for their budgets, and our FCs were just wondering, why the resources were going in to contact these clients already on plans. when there's a lot of people that probably should be on plans, but I could follow that up if that's helpful.
Yeah, no, thank you. That's very helpful, Patrick.
Great. Well, I think given the time, I just wanted to thank Emma and Lauren for taking the time to provide us with that valuable analysis. It's really obviously helpful to us to hear from you and reflect on consumer experience in this way and at this time. So thank you very much. I hope everyone enjoyed and got a lot out of that presentation. And I look forward to having that conversation and dialogue ongoing as you get your survey results over the coming months as well. Perhaps we'll turn to the next item on the agenda. It is 4:20. So there was a deep dive discussion agenda item that I wanted to turn to and pick up on some of the issues raised at the last roundtable, but I also wanted to update you a bit on what the Commission's been doing in the data as well. We've covered a bit of what I wanted to suggest as the deep dive discussion. I don't know whether everybody's seen that on the agenda or not, but the first question was that one I raised when Kate was online from Domestic Violence Victoria, that concern that issues were being characterised as COVID-19 related, many other issues like family violence or mental health aren't being appropriately addressed. I was interested to hear if that was still being seen as an issue. Just throw that out for a comment or reflection if there's anything else anyone wanted to mention on that, and we'll obviously pick that up again perhaps next time. Meg, any hands up or anything at the moment? No? So I'll leave that one with you. If there's any other reflections, you can always get in touch with the team after today as well. The other aspect I wanted to touch on was an update on anything you'd heard from the community on ERG's application experiences, and we've touched on that a little bit as well. And Cynthia, I saw some reflections in your report that came out last week on what customers were telling EWOV about their experience in seeking a utility relief grant, which wasn't all positive. That was a really interesting report just to get a reflection on what's really going on. Anything anyone would like to add to that discussion on ERGs today? And again, if there are things that pop up after today, feel free to reach out to Jess and Kat. The other broader question I was interested in is what are some of the considerations we should have around the lifting of restrictions and coming out of lockdown hopefully soon, and what that experience might be for consumers and small businesses, and we've probably touched more generally on what that is like at the moment, but if anyone wanted to add anything to that, feel free. I think we've done a deep dive on many issues earlier on in the updates in any event. Well, I wanted to, if we're happy to turn to the next part of the agenda, given it's 5 or 6 minutes to go, I just wanted to give an update on the key findings of the data received from our energy retailers for July, as well as a brief explanation of some of the changes to the energy requirements and the water code reforms put in place since our last roundtable with you. And we're really hoping that those changes will provide that increased assistance to consumers, and providing this update to you today, hoping we can raise community awareness of the support that is available with these changes. So just quickly on some of the data, obviously we're receiving data from energy retailers and water businesses, and for July 2020, some of the findings were that, which has been touched on already through your report, Emma, but disconnections for non-payment of energy bills have ceased, which is really pleasing. In terms of residential customers, there was the number of customers calling the energy retail for assistance had actually decreased, but that's not the case for customers reaching out to water businesses. In fact, application for ERGs and calls to water businesses continue to increase. We're seeing arrears of electricity residential customers receiving assistance decreasing, but sort of stabilising for gas customers. And even though it's a small proportion of overall customers, there are about 9,000 electricity and 8,000 gas customers who have chosen to defer their payments altogether. Small business customers, Dominic, you'll be interested in this. An increasing number of small business electricity customers inquired about assistance and are receiving payment assistance from their retailer. and the average arrears of those business customers have increased for electricity but decreased for gas. So we're really keeping a keen eye on the movements in arrears and what sort of payment plans are in place and how many customers are deferring payments altogether, which probably goes to that question of the economic cliff that everybody's talking about, and what happens when financial assistance sort of caves away. In terms of new reforms, just so that everybody is aware, we've introduced some new targeted reforms to support energy customers paying their bills through the pandemic, and those take effect from next month, the 1st of October. There will be an ongoing requirement for retailers to support their residential customers in completing their utility relief grant application forms, including by submitting their forms online on behalf of the customer where it's possible and the customer consents. And as Sarah touched on before, we're having a number of workshops with the industry to tease out any issues that come about or challenges that they're saying that they may not be able to provide that sort of assistance. So we're really keen to make sure that that works, and we've seen it work in water probably much better than in energy. So we're keen to know why that is the case and remove sort of some of those challenges. And that's an ongoing requirement too. Retailers will also be required to conduct a tariff check for all their residential customers and receiving tailored assistance, not just those that can't afford the ongoing cost of their energy. And that's an extension of the existing payment delivery framework, and that'll be in place for 6 months, making sure that customers are on the best deal they possibly can be. In terms of small business, retailers are now required to provide reasonable assistance to small businesses that are experiencing financial stress due to the pandemic, and that will be in place for 6 months too. And it also means that those small businesses that adhere to a payment plan that's been put in place will not be able to be disconnected for non-payment, as set out in the code at the moment. So that's small businesses. In terms of water, we've introduced National Cabinet principles into the water customer codes. And that hardship and bill payment support's been extended to small businesses effective from the 18th of August, so already in place. And that means that debt recovery is to be halted while those customers are experiencing financial stress due to the pandemic as well. We'll work with the industry to see how long those national principles that were designed to be temporary and popped into the codes should be there, and for how long. So we'll be working with them towards the end of the year to see what that looks like. So hopefully that was a lot of information, but I just wanted to share that with you so that you're aware of the new reforms that have come into place for your clients. The other thing I wanted to update you about was the launch of our Vulnerability Strategy Work Program, and we'll be releasing some more information in the coming weeks on that, including an invitation to our launch event on the 17th of September. So please keep an eye on your inboxes for that. And then probably, we're probably 4:29, we've got 1 minute to go. These roundtables always go very quickly. I always wish there was more time to have discussions, but I just wanted to perhaps share some reflections with everyone today, so of what I've heard. What we've heard is about JobKeeper and JobKeeper rollbacks. People have been able to pay their bills because of those payments, so debt seems to still be low. But there's a serious concern about what happens when those are reduced. People who are not eligible for JobKeeper or JobSeeker continue to experience extreme challenges and often have no form of income. Call numbers can continue to be lower or at the same level compared to last year. But according to Emma and Lauren's update, housing and energy related financial concerns are the highest in customer concerns. Continuing, unfortunately, challenges in ensuring access to concessions and concessions not being applied properly or inappropriately, and many who are eligible for them not receiving them, and some concessions dropping off accounts as well. Heard very strongly that the issues around authority to act, and some consumers finding it difficult to give their financial counsellors that, that authority to act on their behalf to retailers, which is something we'll pick up in our workshops with the businesses. And heard particularly from Lauren that debt accumulation is a risk, especially for young people taking out loans to pay household debt, and the way that they're servicing their outgoings at the moment. So those are some of the themes I've heard today. It's been a really interesting discussion today and very valuable. So can I just take the opportunity to thank everyone for making the time again to come to our 5th roundtable. and provide your contributions and insights into the effect of the pandemic on Victoria's community. As usual, we'll be doing a write-up of the event, and please feel free to reach out to Kat or Jess or any of our team to follow up on anything after this discussion. As I said, I think we could probably talk for another hour non-stop. I'll leave you now. Hopefully we can keep the dialogue and engagement ongoing with you all so that we can best tackle these challenges collectively. I hope to see you at our next roundtable and perhaps on the 17th of September as well for our launch of our strategy, if not before. Everybody stay well and take care, but thanks for your time and for being here today.
Thanks, Kate. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks.